My wife's parents never really took me seriously, at least not until I proved myself. Before that, I was just another guy dating their daughter. But when I got rich, they tried to renegotiate the prenup. I made one move that shut that down for good. I met Lena when I was 25. I had just finished college and landed my first real job at an IT company in Salt Lake City. She was wrapping up her teaching degree, and we met at a friend's backyard barbecue. There was something about her, an ease in how she carried herself. Her laugh could fill a room and make people feel instantly comfortable. I was hooked from the start. Lena came from a background a little different than mine. Her dad ran several car dealerships, and her mom owned a boutique in Park City. They weren't extravagantly wealthy, but they were definitely comfortable. Money wasn't something they had to worry about. My family was more middle of the road. My dad worked as an electrician, my mom was a nurse. They raised me and my two brothers in a small, modest home. We had food, warmth, and love, but there were no extras. New clothes were rare, and vacations were almost unheard of. Lena and I clicked quickly. We started dating, and within a year, I knew she was the one. I proposed at the park where we used to spend lazy weekends together. She said yes, and for a while, everything felt perfect, almost. Her parents, especially her father, didn't hide their skepticism. They never came right out and said I wasn't good enough, but it was in the way they spoke to me. Questions like, "So, Jake, where do you see yourself in 5 years?" Or comments like, "Lena's used to a certain lifestyle." Always polite, always indirect, but the message was clear. I let it slide. I loved Lena, and she was in my corner. Then came the wedding planning and the prenup. One evening, after dinner, her dad pulled me aside into his office. He had that fatherly, serious expression, like he was about to share life advice. Instead, he handed me a thick envelope and said, "It's just a formality, Jake. We're protecting Lena's future. I'm sure you understand." But I didn't. Not at all. It felt like a slap in the face. Why assume I'd ever come for their money? Sure, I wasn't making much, about $48,000 a year at the time, but I had plans. Big ones. Ambition wasn't something I lacked. I wanted to prove I was worth something, not just to them, but to myself. I didn't want to cause drama, so I took the documents home. I was angry, confused, but I told myself to be calm. The prenup spelled it out clearly. If Lena and I ever divorced, I'd leave with only what I personally earned. No claim to her inheritance, no share of any family assets. It wasn't about us. It was about shielding her. It felt cold, impersonal. When I brought it up to Lena, hoping she'd see my point, she just said, "It's just paperwork, Jake. It doesn't change how I feel about you." Her tone was calm, but I saw the tension in her eyes. She was caught in the middle. I didn't want to force her to choose. So I swallowed my pride and signed. Told myself it didn't matter. I wasn't marrying her for her family's money. Now, looking back, I realized that might have been the first moment I let them take control of how our relationship worked. At the time, I thought I was doing the mature thing, being understanding. I figured they'd come around eventually. I thought the prenup would never matter. We were starting fresh, building a life from scratch. Our wedding was beautiful, no doubt. But there were awkward moments too. My family, my brothers, cousins, showed up in off-the-rack suits, while Lena's side looked like they stepped out of a lifestyle magazine. No one said anything, but the contrast was obvious. After the honeymoon, we moved into a modest apartment in Salt Lake City. Lena got a job teaching elementary school, and I stayed at the IT company. Those early years weren't easy. We budgeted carefully, cooked at home almost every night, and saved every extra dollar. Her parents occasionally made comments about our frugal lifestyle, but we didn't let it get to us. We were happy, focused. Still, that prenup never really disappeared. I didn't expect we'd need it, but its presence lingered. It was more than just a document. It was a reminder, a symbol of their distrust. Every time her dad made a snide comment about my career, or her mom joked about how smart they were to have had me sign it, I felt it all over again. They said it like it was harmless. It wasn't. I didn't confront them. I kept working, grinding, not just to prove myself to them, but to prove that I was worth something. For Lena, for me, the prenup kept creeping back in. Casual dinner conversations, sly remarks, her dad tossing around phrases like, "Good thing we were cautious." They meant it as small talk, but every word dug a little deeper. I stayed quiet, focused. I believed as long as Lena and I were strong, none of that noise mattered. But now I know, that prenup was never just legal protection. It was their way of saying I didn't belong, that I'd never truly be one of them. Things didn't change all at once, but slowly little wins started adding up. At 29, I finally got my break. But the road there? It wasn't easy. I knew that if I wanted to move up in life, I couldn't keep playing it safe. One afternoon at work, my colleague Eli started talking about a side gig he'd picked up, freelance coding for small startups. At first, it sounded like a burnout recipe. I figured he'd crash eventually. No way he could juggle that much. Then he showed me a pay stub from 1 month of freelancing. I was stunned. The guy was pulling in double what we earned at our day jobs. That was the moment something in me flipped. I'd always had a knack for coding, web dev, back-end logic, solving tricky problems. I spent most of my free time tinkering with new frameworks, learning languages, building side projects just for fun. Lena didn't really get it. You already work full-time, she said more than once. Why are you pushing yourself even harder? But I couldn't ignore the feeling. Like a door had cracked open, and if I didn't walk through it, I'd regret it. About 8 months into moonlighting, I landed a contract that changed everything. A scrappy little startup needed someone to build their back-end infrastructure from the ground up. The pay? Bigger than anything I'd seen. And they threw in stock options, too. I didn't know much about equity. For all I knew, those shares were just paper. But something about their energy, their mission, made me believe. So I said yes. I bet on them and on myself. The next 15 months were a blur. I kept my full-time job, clocked 40 hours a week, then jumped into startup work the rest of the time. Nights, weekends, holidays, it didn't matter. I was all in. Lena tried to be supportive, and she was, but I could see the toll. Missed dinners. Canceled plans. Date nights that turned into me glued to a laptop. We argued sometimes. I'd promise, just a little more time. But deep down, I think we both knew I was stretching that promise then. And then it happened. The startup got acquired. Just like that, those dusty little stock options turned into real money. One day we were rationing expenses and juggling bills, and the next, I could pay off every debt we had and still have money in the bank. I'll never forget Lena's face when I told her. Shock, joy, disbelief all rolled into one. It didn't feel real. But that was the turning point. Our lives were changing. The following week, I handed in my notice at work. That moment had lived in my head for years. My boss wasn't thrilled, he said. Jake, you're one of our top guys. You sure you want to walk away from this? But I was already gone. My eyes were set on something bigger. First thing I did with that new freedom? I surprised Lena with a trip to Hawaii. We talked about it for years, always saying someday. Well, someday had finally arrived. I wanted her to know I hadn't forgotten about us. That trip was everything: crystal water, fake-looking sunsets, food that made you forget about calories. But even on the beach, my mind wouldn't shut off. I kept thinking, what's next? That's when I knew I didn't just enjoy building things. I needed it. The freedom, the risk, the ownership, it lit something in me. So I took the leap and started my own business. I used the buyout money to launch a property management company. Real estate had always intrigued me. It seemed like a steady, grounded path to long-term wealth. No bosses, no time cards. But starting a company was chaos. Legal forms, payroll, hiring, taxes, it was like drinking from a fire hose. Still, I threw myself into it. Read every book I could find, signed up for business seminars, leaned hard on a mentor I'd met during my freelancing days. Progress was slow. It was messy. Long nights, big mistakes, tons of stress. But little by little, it began to click. By the time I turned 32, the business wasn't just working, it was thriving. A growing list of clients. A tight, reliable team. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't counting every dollar or watching the calendar until payday. I had security. I had built something real. And I was proud. Deeply proud. I figured maybe, finally, Lena's parents would see me differently. I thought I'd earned it. At first, it seemed like I had. Her dad, Richard, started calling more often. He'd ask about the business, bounce ideas off me. One day, he called and said, thinking about buying a commercial property downtown. What's your take? It felt good. Like he actually respected what I had to say. I offered advice, glad to help. I saw it as a small sign I'd made it. But then the conversation started shifting. One day, out of nowhere, Richard asked, you ever think about investing with me? Just to get the ball rolling, help me get set up. That stopped me in my tracks. On one hand, he was family. I wanted to be generous, supportive. But on the other hand, The more I thought about Richard's investment idea, the shakier it seemed. I didn't want to offend him, so I gave the most respectful answer I could. I wasn't in a position to put money into anything right now. That's when something shifted. He didn't say anything rude, didn't raise his voice, but the next time we saw him, the vibe was different. Not hostile, just colder. Lena picked up on it immediately. Later that night, she asked if something had happened between us. I shrugged it off. Said maybe he was stressed with business stuff. But I knew better, he hadn't taken my no well. Carol, Lena's mom, played things differently. Her style was more subtle, passive-aggressive, underhanded. She'd toss out casual remarks like, "Everything's gotten so expensive lately," or, "It's tricky keeping up the lifestyle we're used to now that Richard's only semi-working." Then came the kicker. "We're not as young as we used to be, Jake," she'd say with a sweet smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Sometimes I just think how fortunate you and Lena are to have such a secure financial base." Fortunate. That word hit a nerve. There was nothing lucky about what I'd built. Every dollar had been wrestled out of missed sleep, canceled weekends, stress, and sacrifice. But I held my tongue. I wasn't looking for a fight. Then things escalated. Lena and I went over to her parents' place for dinner one weekend. It started out fine steak, small talk, the usual performative family cheer. But halfway through the meal, Richard set his knife down, looked right at me, and said, "You know, Jake, I've been thinking about that prenup we had you sign before the wedding." I froze. I hadn't thought about that document in years. At the time, it was just something we did to keep the peace, something I assumed no longer mattered. We were long past that. "What about it?" I asked, already sensing where this was headed. "Well," he said slowly, slicing his steak again, "considering how far you've come, don't you think it's a little outdated? I mean, you've built a great life for Lena. I respect that. But maybe it's time to let that piece of paper go." I looked at Lena. She was focused on her mashed potatoes like they held the secret to world peace. That told me everything. She'd seen this coming and hadn't said a word. "I don't know, Richard," I said carefully. "It's never really come up. Doesn't seem like it's doing any harm." Carol jumped in, all sweetness and polish. "Things are different now, Jake. Back then, we were thinking about Lena's future. But now, you're successful, and more importantly, your family." Family. That word again. Always their favorite when they wanted something, but never without strings. I turned back to Lena, silently hoping she'd speak up. Say anything. But she stayed quiet. And that silence stung more than anything they could have said. "Honestly," I said, "I don't see a reason to revisit it. It's just a document. It's not hurting anyone. It's just collecting dust." Richard's smile thinned. Carol gave Lena a sharp look, like, "Seriously? Say something." Nobody pushed the issue right then, but the tension didn't leave the room. On the drive home, I brought it up. "Why didn't you say anything when they started in on the prenup?" Lena sighed, eyes fixed on the window. "Because I don't want to get caught in the middle, Jake. You know how they are. They just want to make sure I'm okay." "And what about us being okay?" I asked. "This is our marriage. Why are they digging into something that hasn't caused a single problem?" She didn't have a real answer. Just said, "Talk to them, all right? Don't let it get to you." But it did get to me. And it didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, Richard and Carol kept circling back, each time pretending it was just a casual topic. Light chat. No pressure. But the message was loud and clear. Lena got pulled into it too. She started saying things like, "What do you have to lose by canceling it?" It started to feel like I was being cornered. Her parents pushing from one side. Lena nudging from the other. I loved her, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing alone. Then came the breaking point. One afternoon, in the middle of work, Carol called me. Started off polite, asking about my day, making small talk. But it didn't take long before she pivoted. "Jake, I really think you should consider how this looks," she said. "Keeping that prenup makes it seem like you don't fully trust Lena. That's not fair to her." That was it. "With all due respect, Carol," I said, forcing calm into my voice, "this isn't for you to decide. Lena and I are fine with how things are." There was a pause. Then she said something I won't ever forget. "Well, if you're so determined to hang on to it, I guess we'll just have to see how Lena feels about that over time." Not quite a threat, but it felt like one. I hung up, furious. That night, I told Lena what her mom had said. She didn't even flinch. "She's just concerned, Jake," she said. "They're looking out for me. They're not trying to be hurtful." And that's when it finally hit me. This was never just about a prenup. This was about control. Her parents had always had a hand on the wheel of her life. Now they were trying to grab mine too. That's when it hit me for real. This wasn't just about a prenup. It was about power, control. Her parents had always had a strong hand in her life, and now they were trying to steer mine too. Hey folks, Jake here again. First off, thank you to everyone who's been following along. Your messages, your stories, they've meant more than I can say. Writing this all out has helped me see things I hadn't before. And knowing others have faced similar stuff, that's helped me stay grounded. So here's where we are now. Things haven't gotten better. In fact, the pressure's only grown. Lena keeps bringing up the prenup, but her tone's different now. It's no longer, let's talk about this. Now it's more like, if you really trusted me, you'd get rid of it. We've had a few blow-ups, but the last one hit different. I finally told her flat out. This isn't about trust, Lena. This is about your parents trying to control our marriage. She didn't take that well. Her voice sharpened. Or maybe this is about you not trusting me. What kind of husband keeps a prenup hanging over his wife's head for years? That cut deep. I reminded her, the prenup had never been an issue before. So why now? What's really changed, besides her parents suddenly realizing I'm successful? She rolled her eyes and muttered, paranoid. She's been using that word a lot lately. I knew we needed to get out of the house, get away from the noise. I suggested we go up to the old riverside cabin. It used to be our little escape. I thought maybe it could reset things. Maybe even save what was left between us. She agreed, though I could tell her heart wasn't in it. When we arrived, the place hadn't changed. Quiet. Still. Wrapped in trees and silence. For a moment, it felt like us again. That first night, we made dinner together. It was almost normal. But underneath, there was this weight. Neither of us said it, but we both felt it. The next morning, I stopped dancing around it. We were sitting on the dock, watching the river drift by, when I finally asked, Lena, I need to know what this is really about. Is this coming from you? Or from them? She sighed, visibly irritated. Jake, this is about us. This is me talking. I just don't think the prenup makes sense anymore. But I wasn't buying it. Come on, Lena. Let's not pretend this didn't start with your parents. They pushed for the prenup when we got married. Now they're desperate to erase it? That's not a coincidence. She turned toward me, her face hard. Do you even hear yourself? You talk like they're villains. They're just trying to look out for me. For you, sure. But what about us? They've been interfering in our marriage since day one. And I'm done letting them pull the strings. Then she said something that made my blood boil. Maybe this isn't about them. Maybe it's about you. Maybe you're so wrapped up in your own insecurity that you can't see how unfair this is, for me. That landed like a punch. Insecure, I said, my voice rising. You think I'm insecure because I won't rip up a legal document your parents forced on me? One that basically said I couldn't be trusted? She crossed her arms. If you really trusted me now, you wouldn't need it. Maybe we shouldn't even be talking about a future together. That was a gut punch. But I held my ground. Wow, I said. So now it's, tear up the prenup or I'm out. Real mature, Lena. It's not a threat, she said flatly. It's just reality. If the prenup matters more to you than we do, then maybe you don't see me as a partner. Maybe you're just waiting for an excuse to walk away with everything. That was it. I stood up, looked her in the eye, and said, don't flip this on me like I'm the problem. I've worked my ass off for everything we have, with zero help from your family. If anyone should be questioning loyalty here, it's me. She didn't say a word, just stared at me like I was someone she didn't recognize anymore. I walked back to the cabin alone, heart pounding, head spinning. The rest of the trip? A disaster. We barely spoke. And when we did, it was short, tense, exhausted. By the time we packed up and drove home, it was obvious. We were no longer on the same page. Maybe not even in the same book. This week, I'm starting therapy. First session's booked. I don't even know exactly what I'm hoping for, but I need help figuring out what to do next. Right now, it feels like I'm in the middle of a minefield. Every step, every word could blow it all up. I still love Lena. But this whole thing, it's made me question everything. Everything we built. Everything we promised. If you've ever been through something like this, I'd love to hear how you handled it. Thanks for reading. And for having my back. The moment I walked through the door, Richard didn't waste a second. Jake, he said, already heated, we've talked it over. It's time to put this prenup thing to bed. It's tearing the family apart. We can't live like this anymore. I stood there stunned. We? Since when did my marriage become a family boardroom decision? I looked at Lena, hoping she'd step in, calm things down, maybe take my side. just once. But she sat silently on the couch, eyes fixed on the floor like she couldn't bring herself to look up. Look, I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. I've made my position clear. The prenup stays. This conversation is over. That's when Carol jumped in. Jake, you're being completely unreasonable, she snapped, shaking her head. Lena's given everything to this marriage, and you're treating her like she's disposable. Disposable? I fired back. I've worked my ass off building a life for both of us, while dealing with nonstop pressure and interference from you. With all due respect, Carol, this is between me and my wife, not you. But she didn't let up. It is my business when it's hurting my daughter. If you loved her, you'd see how much this is affecting her. And then Richard leaned in with something that chilled me. You're not the only one with choices here, Jake. Lena deserves protection. If you can't understand that, maybe your marriage isn't as strong as you think. It was subtle, but it landed like a threat. So now our whole relationship hinges on whether I tear up the legal agreement you made me sign? I said, you've got some nerve, Richard. Silence. Even Nina, Lena's younger sister, looked uncomfortable. She kept shifting in her seat, eyes darting around the room. She was usually quiet, stayed out of the drama. I didn't think much of it at the time, but looking back, I should have known. She knew something. Eventually, I told everyone to leave. I wasn't going to sit there and be ambushed in my own living room. Lena stayed behind. What followed was one of the ugliest fights we'd ever had. She accused me of being cold, selfish. I told her I was tired of feeling like a walking bank account her parents thought they could manage. It spiraled until she finally screamed that she was going to stay at her parents' house for a few days. I didn't stop her. The next day, I got a call from Nina. That surprised me. We rarely talked outside of holidays or birthdays. She sounded anxious, her voice low like she didn't want to be overheard. She asked if we could meet somewhere private. I figured she wanted to apologize or explain what happened. We met at a quiet coffee shop on the edge of town. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept. Kept glancing over her shoulder, nervous, like someone might be watching. Then she leaned in. Jake, I overheard something you need to know. What she told me hit like a freight train. She said that a few weeks ago, she'd been at a family dinner. No one realized she was in the next room. That night, she heard Richard, Carol, and Lena talking, planning, plotting. They said the prenup needs to go before Lena can leave you, Nina whispered. Her hands were shaking. I blinked. Leave me? Why would Lena want to leave? She hesitated, then dropped the bomb. Because she's been seeing someone else. And my parents know. That's why they're pushing so hard. If she divorces you with the prenup still in place, she walks away with nothing. It felt like the ground vanished beneath me. I asked again, needing to hear it, even if it destroyed me. Are you sure? She nodded. I didn't want to believe it either. But I heard it all. They even talked about how to make it look like you were the one who ruined things, so Lena doesn't take the blame. I sat there, stunned, numb, but I could see it. Nina wasn't lying. She looked sick about it. Why are you telling me this? I asked, barely able to get the words out. Because it's wrong, she said. You've always treated Lena with respect. You don't deserve what they're planning. I can't stay quiet and let this happen. I thanked her, promised not to drag her into it. After she left, I just sat there, thinking, replaying every argument, every cold silence, every moment that had felt off. And suddenly, it all made sense. When I got home, I started going through our accounts, bank statements, credit cards, anything I could find. And sure enough, there were red flags everywhere. Restaurant bills I didn't recognize, hotel charges, even receipts from a jewelry store I'd never set foot in. I haven't said anything to Lena yet, but I've started gathering everything. I called my lawyer, laid it all out. They told me, stay calm, stay smart, don't make any sudden moves. Easy for them to say. Right now, I'm just trying to figure out what's next. This isn't just heartbreak. It's betrayal on a level I never imagined. I don't know exactly what the future holds. But one thing I know for sure, the prenup isn't going anywhere. And neither is my self-respect. If you've been through something like this and have advice, I'm listening. And really, thank you. To everyone who's followed this story, shared kind words, and stood by me, it means more than you know. Final update, entry 3. Hey, it's Jake again, hopefully for the last time. This whole ordeal has been a damn roller coaster, but here's the good news. I finally made it to the other side. And it feels incredible to breathe again. After Nina came forward with the truth, and huge credit to her for that, I didn't waste time. I gathered everything and went straight to my lawyer. Between the infidelity, the shady financial stuff, and her parents' involvement, building a case was easier than I ever expected. When I finally sat down with Lena and laid it all out, she didn't even try to deny it. She just broke down crying, saying how lonely she felt, how invisible I'd made her feel while I was always working. You cared more about your job than me, she sobbed. But I wasn't buying it. I looked her in the eyes and said, you don't get to blame me for your choices. I was breaking my back to build a life for us. You're the one who threw it away. She tried to spin it. If you just paid more attention, maybe I wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere. That one hurt, but I stayed calm. No, Lena, you didn't need to do anything. You chose to. And now you have to live with that. When I told her I'd already filed the divorce papers, her face went pale. Shocked. Like she never thought I'd actually go through with it. Then came the begging, the pleading, the promises. Let's fix this, she said. We can go to therapy. Start over. Please. But I was already gone. Emotionally, I've been gone for a while. There's nothing left to fix, I told her. The trust is gone. No apology is going to rebuild what you burned down. And now, the prenup. That ironclad little document they forced on me? Yeah, that became my greatest protection. Thanks to that very agreement her family once shoved in my face, Lena walked away with nothing. No share of my business. No piece of my savings. No spousal support. Add the cheating on top? She didn't have a legal leg to stand on. Of course, Carol lost it. Voicemail after voicemail, guilt-tripping, lecturing, accusing, telling me to be the bigger person and help Lena out. The irony didn't escape me. I didn't respond. My lawyer told me to keep records, just in case they tried anything later. And once they realized they had zero leverage, the messages stopped. Then I learned the real reason they were so desperate to get rid of that prenup. Turns out, Richard and Carol weren't doing nearly as well as they pretended. Their businesses had been bleeding money for years. All the flash, all the appearances, smoke and mirrors. When Lena moved back in with them, everything unraveled. She went from a custom-built home to crashing in her childhood bedroom. The designer clothes, the spa visits, the weekend brunches gone. Word is, they're still clinging to the illusion. But the cracks are showing, and it's only a matter of time before it all collapses. As for the guy Lena cheated with, the one she thought would be her escape, he bailed the moment things got complicated. Nina told me he had a history, jumping from one woman to the next. The second he realized Lena didn't have access to my money, he ghosted. Now she's broke. Unemployed, living with her parents who can't rescue her anymore. If that's not karma, I don't know what is. I thought that would be the end. But of course, Lena came back one last time. A few weeks after the divorce was finalized, she barged into my office. My assistant tried to stop her, but she forced her way in. She looked worn down, hair messy, clothes wrinkled, eyes red from crying. Jake, she said, tears streaking her face. I made a mistake. Please. I need you to forgive me. I leaned back in my chair, just looked at her. And honestly, I didn't feel angry, just tired. Lena, I said, we've already been through this. You didn't just screw up once. You made choice after choice that destroyed everything. She kept trying apologies, blaming her parents, even playing the nostalgia card. We can start over, Jake. I'll do anything. I'll change. But there was nothing left to rebuild. You didn't just cheat, I told her. You conspired to leave me. You tried to take everything I'd worked for. That's not love. That's betrayal. And then, when she saw I wasn't giving in, she turned. You're going to regret this, Jake. You'll end up alone. One day, you'll realize you pushed away the only person who really loved you. I just shook my head. No, Lena. You love the life I gave you, not me. Now you get to figure out how to live without it. I called security and had her escorted out. That was the last time I saw her. Since then, life's been quiet, peaceful, and honestly, that's everything I need right now. I still talk to Nina. She apologized again for what her family put me through. But she didn't need to. She's the only one who actually did the right thing. I'll always respect her for that. As for Lena and her parents, well, from what I hear, things are only getting worse. I feel for Nina, having to live in the fallout. But the rest of them? They're facing the consequences of their own choices. And if this whole saga taught me anything, it's this. Stand your ground. People will guilt you, manipulate you, try to twist your values to serve their own. But you have to know your worth. Protect it. No matter who's on the other side of the argument. To anyone out there dealing with toxic in-laws, a manipulative partner, We're just trying to survive in the middle of someone else's storm. Listen to your instincts. Speak up. Guard your peace. It's not easy, but it's worth it.